Hey, folks, thanks for joining us today. There are certain people that just get something under their skin that they just can't let go of. And sometimes that's such a good thing for us. I'm really pleased to have a lady on the show today by the name of Susan Neal. She's a registered nurse, she's got her MBA, um, she's got a master's in health science, and is just really an amazing lady talking about nutrition and how that can be so healthy for us if we eat the right foods. And she's written a new book that we're going to talk about today that's focused for kids on how they can learn to eat better, develop better habits so that we can start to affect the obesity rate in our young children that is becoming literally a pandemic. And we don't even want to really admit that. So please join us for the show. I think you're going to find it really interesting.
At the end of the day, it's not about what you have or even what you've accomplished. It's about what you've done with those accomplishments. It's about who you've lifted up, who you've made better. It's about what you've given back. Denzel Washington. Welcome to Inspire Vision. Our sole purpose is to elevate the lives of others and to inspire you to do the same.
Hey, folks, thanks for joining us. And Susan, how are you doing?
I'm doing wonderful. And you, Doug?
Hey, I'm doing great. It's been great. How many times have you been on the show now?
This is my second time.
Is this your second time? Okay, cool.
Yes.
And what's cool about it is the first time we were talking really about your book that you had written. What was that, about a year ago or 2 years ago?
Yes. Yeah. I think it was last year. Yes. The 7 steps to get off sugar and carbs. Yes.
Right. And how has that book been received?
Oh, it has been fabulous. It has over 600 reviews on Amazon. It's been #1 on Amazon for over a year. It's been a really good bestseller, definitely.
Oh, that's fantastic. And really the whole goal of that is to get off sugar and carbs. And let's talk about that for a minute, because we were chatting a little bit before we actually started the interview. And when we talk about carbs, are there healthy carbs and unhealthy carbs, or is it just get off of carbs?
Oh, there's healthy and unhealthy. So you were saying that you eat loads of cauliflower and apples. And I said, well, those are God's carbs. Those are God's carbohydrates. Those are good ones. It's when you get the refined white flour, the white rice, the things that are created that we can't even tell what the original food that it came from is. The potato flakes that you make mashed potatoes from. Those are refined carbohydrates with no nutrients. They're processed and they're unhealthy.
Yeah. Okay. Well, you've written a new book.
Yes,
Tell
I
us,
have.
and what brought this about? I'm curious as to what life experiences or feedback that you've been getting brought you to write this new book, which is called
Eat God's Food, a kid's guide to healthy eating.
Okay. Eat God's Food. All righty. So what brought you to write a book for kids? And is it for kids, or is it for parents who have kids, or all of the above?
It's for kids. So my previous book, 7 Steps to Get Off Sugar and Carbohydrates, it has done so well, and it is really targeted towards people who have health problems, because in the United States, 50% of Americans have a chronic illness, and over 40% suffer with obesity. And so I want to make an impact on those statistics. I want to bring people health. I want to help them to recover their health, their vigor, their energy. And so that's why I write what I write. But to make this have such an impact, I need to go to the kids. So this is a picture book for 4 to 8-year-olds to start to teach them and educate them that, hey, don't be fooled by the junk food and the processed food thinking it's healthy. It's not. And so I want to educate them, but at the same time, make it fun with lots of activities that they do and little recipes that they cook with their parent, and to educate them kids like in second grade, they start reading these huge Harry Potter novels. So it's like, well, they can process this as well.
Yeah, they might as well. Oh, that's funny. Well, and so, I'm just sitting here thinking, all right, so I've got a granddaughter that's right that age. If I give it to her, I know that she's going to start telling her parents, we shouldn't be doing that. We shouldn't be eating that. And then I'm going to get a call from their parents.
That's okay. That's okay. It's great now. I mean, out of the mouth of babes, right? Then when they learn something then that sticks with them. And so I just don't want them to be a part of that statistic. It just breaks that statistic in the United States, just breaks my heart. And I want kids to be healthy. So,
Well, and let's talk about those statistics. Childhood obesity. And I guess maybe we should define obesity, because there's definitely a definition between obesity versus having a few pounds more than would be ideal versus thin, whatever. So what is the definition of obesity based on how you're using it?
I really did not look that up. Let's see. I just don't have that off the top of my head if it's 20% overweight or what exactly it is. But I do know that 1 in 4 children are overweight or have obesity. So it's basically, like a 25% statistic between the two. And also, if a child is overweight in kindergarten, then they're 4 times more likely to have obesity by 8th grade. So if they understand that the candy and the soda and the caloric rich foods don't have any nutrients, and they're not healthy for the body, then maybe they will choose to eat God's strawberries and cantaloupe and peaches. And, those are his desserts.
Well, and I remember last time we talked, because we can talk about organic versus non-organic, and I know that you suggest organic when possible, but you also, last time you gave me a link to, because the United States actually comes out and analyzes all of these fruits and vegetables to say, all right, this has so much in it and this doesn't. So you actually come up with a list of good non-organics and then not so
Yeah.
good non-organics.
Right. It's called the Dirty Dozen and the Clean 15. So, and this year, cherries were on the Dirty Dozen, and my daughters
Really?
love cherries. And I'm like, Brooke, I can't get you cherries this year unless they're organic. And she was just in town visiting. We went to the grocery store and they had organic cherries. It was like, okay, we can get them.
Well, let's talk about this, because what's interesting I see is, in general, what has happened is society has sought to really minimize what has been in the past an image situation where you've got all the models, you've got all the movie stars and so on and so forth, where that image actually did cause some issues for our young people, because they could never quite match up to what they saw on the screen or what they saw in the magazines and so forth. But at the same time, now we've got a situation where everything is kind of just accepted and it just is what it is. And I'm not sure people are thinking about what are the ultimate consequences to our choices. And I think in this particular case, there are some really, really serious health issues that come along with obesity that start, I guess, early in childhood and then come along from there. Can you kind of share a little bit about what obesity is doing to the health of our people, our children, as well as adults?
Right. So for children and adults, it can lead to type 2 diabetes. But for children, more so, it's asthma, anxiety, and depression. So if you're having a child, who's dealing with anxiety and depression, well, obesity and being overweight kind of, has something to do with that. Also, there's low self-esteem and social problems and bullying when you get, when you have children who, are at a weight that they just don't feel comfortable with. And so, that's a real emotional issue that they have to deal with. So I hope to help them through educating them.
Well, and you just mentioned something that I'd not heard before, but you're saying that obesity can lead to asthma, it can lead to anxiety and depression. Now, I think about that and I think about, okay, so if I approach a child and they're overweight and you start talking to them about that, that's going to put them into greater anxiety, just that itself. And yet, what you're suggesting is that this can cause anxiety.
Well, that's what the Center for Disease Control in the United States has said, that obesity can lead to anxiety and depression. Yes.
Wow. Wow, that is amazing. And guess what? Anxiety and depression is a rampant thing going on right now
It
with all of
really
our
is.
young.
And what happens is that when we consume a high sugar or very high refined carbohydrate type of food, it goes into our bodies, and our pancreas has to release the insulin because our blood sugar spikes. Then our insulin comes in and it brings it down. And if you ever, I felt that terrible, just flat line of I'm devoid of energy and everything after you've had your sugar high and you don't feel good and you're cranky. Well, then the body releases adrenaline, the fight or flight kind of hormone. It releases adrenaline to perk you up again, and that causes anxiety.
Interesting. Really interesting. So that happens even within our young children. And then what happens when we become adults? Because there's a lot more consequences to this situation once we become adults. What are some of those things?
High blood pressure, high cholesterol, and heart disease. And let me tell you about this with heart disease. Okay. It's like the sugar crystals. It has to do with the high sugar consumption that puts like these little spikes in our blood vessels. And then the high cholesterol comes and sticks to the spiky sugar stuff in our blood vessels. And that's what clogs our arteries. It's
Hmm.
not necessarily the fats. Remember in the 1980s, we were on this low fat diet, low fat everything. Well, that wasn't it. It was the sugar that was the culprit for heart disease. But then there's also glucose intolerance and insulin resistance, sleep apnea. So many different people need their CPAP machines now. But if they lost 30 pounds, this is an adult, then they probably would not need their sleep apnea machine anymore. Fatty liver disease, gallstones, heartburn. I mean, it just goes on and on.
Wow. That's well, on sleep apnea, that's interesting because you have three different types of sleep apnea. So when you suggest that they're going to lose 20 pounds, does that handle all three types of sleep apnea or just mainly the main one that they talk about, which is
Probably,
obstructive?
yeah, probably just the main one.
Okay. All right. That's good to know. So the book, all right. What is the real motivation for this? What suddenly got you motivated to write this book of Eat God's Food, a guide for the kids?
I love kids. I was a swim lesson instructor for 10 years. I used to teach kids horseback riding lessons. Just love them. They're so much fun. And I wanted something fun and active. And I wanted to influence the younger generation, and at their formative years, 4 to 8 is the real formative years. So I go through like each food group that God gave us, like a fruit or vegetable, nut, seed, meat, or grain. I go through each one of them. And then after I explain it with a cute illustration, I have an activity. So they have to seek and find the fruit, or they could read a food label and find the bad ingredients, or matching the nuts to the picture, all these fun stuff. And then I have a little recipe afterwards, like let's make frozen berries and fruit smoothies, or pop popcorn, and put coconut oil on top because it's delicious and sweet. And so it just goes on and on with a little recipe for the parent to do with the child. And then you have a great bonding time with the parent and the child. And that provides an opportunity for them to talk about what the kid was reading in the book.
Well, and so really, I mean, as I look at it, this is something that as the parents are working with the kids, this can definitely change. Or have you seen, obviously it's not been out that long, but is part of the goal to change the habits of children who potentially have got bad habits? They're eating a lot of candy, they just love all of that stuff. Is this some way that a parent can actually work with their child and help them to change those habits that are causing, or going to ultimately cause a lot of health problems?
Absolutely, 100%. Yes, it would fulfill that and really help the parent to work with the child. And we don't want our children to dominate what is on the dinner table. And that has really happened in our society. And so hopefully through this education, the kids are smart. Well, they can pick up on this and be like, okay, well, how about if we, not get the candy this time, and we try sugar snap peas, or whatever delicious type of fruit, watermelon that they love.
It's going to be tough, isn't it, for some kids to make that change?
It is. It is. So we'll see what happens.
Well, let's talk about the parents. I mean, I know this is written for the kids, but how do we change the parents' habits? Because it's the parents that are out there buying the. Now, you said it's really the kids that are determining what's on the table, but is that necessarily true, or is it kind of the parents that are? It's easy to just feed them those sugar snacks. It's just easy to keep them happy by giving them a package of this or a package of that.
It is. It is. I was a parent. I was guilty. I fed them, those macaroni and cheese packets. That was easy, easy. So we have to, as parents, we need to like start providing, different alternatives. Let's do a green apple with some almond butter, or let's do sugar snap peas, or blueberries, organic strawberries. How about just some slices of oranges? Oranges are delicious. Organic popcorn, popping it is fun. And that's on the stove, not the microwave stuff. So
Oh, okay.
get organic popcorn and pop it on the stove. They'll be like, what is this? I've never seen this before. No, it's left a whole generation. They don't even know about that. Get some nuts, some almonds, pecans, pistachios, just whatever else you can think of, sliced carrots, celery. How about sunflower seeds? How about pumpkin seeds? And let's just explore different foods and different snacks that are not processed. And vegetables and fruits are a lot less expensive than processed foods.
So, I think one of the biggest challenges I've seen, because I've known people who have gone vegan and they actually have gained weight. And of course, they're saying they're not eating any processed foods, so they're going vegan. So, do you find that literally, if you can really develop a correct program for nutrition, that you're actually going to lose weight, or are there circumstances or exceptions, or how do you do that? I know there's a lot of people that are trying to eat really right and they still haven't lost their weight.
Well, for losing weight, the number one thing I always say to do is stop eating wheat. wheat was hybridized, white flour has no nutrients. If you remove that from your diet, you can usually lose a pound a week with that one change. You want to quit drinking sodas and if you go and you get a coffee, a frappuccino or something, that's so much sugar and you want to stay away from that. So I really don't get into prescribing a specific diet. I make it simple and I just say, look at your plate. Did God create the food or did a food manufacturer? If you can recognize that this food came out of the garden or off of the ranch, eat it. If you don't know what that food was before it was made into a square, don't eat it.
How easy is that to follow?
Right. It's not counting anything or right.
Just it makes it a little bit more difficult shopping because now you have to avoid all of those aisles that you spend so much time in and just basically go to the meats and the produce, right?
Exactly. It's so simple and easy. In 20 minutes, you're out of there. You just go through the produce section, go through the seafood section, the meat section, through the refrigerated section, and then you're done. You're done. You might have to get your few things in the center, but not many.
It's interesting because really we're all, we're in habits. It's when I look at things, oftentimes I think even sometimes our behavior, when I get into the behavioral analysis and look at, why do people respond in different ways? And you can go into the aspect of, preconditioned imprints and experiences and all of that. I look at it and I go, but what it really is it's a habit. It's something that has been created within the brain neurons, and therefore it's a habit that we don't like to admit, but it's a habit. Well, you look at what we eat, and quite honestly, it can be a habit. How tough is it though to change habits?
Well, look, can I read you a paragraph from Eat God's Foods?
Absolutely.
Okay. Once you stop eating junk food, something very interesting happens. Within a couple of weeks, your taste buds return to normal. And God's foods begin to taste good again. Take a few bites each time one is served. Natural foods don't have added salt or sugar. Instead, they are full of vitamins and minerals you need. So our taste buds return to normal. If they can just go for a couple of weeks and, titrate off of all of that bad stuff. And maybe for this book, it'll get to them before they have gotten into those habits.
Well, and you talk about sugar, and sugar is really an addiction in my mind. And believe me, I'm I'm there. I just went and bought some sorbet just as a snack. But the challenge is that sugar really becomes an addiction for us. We want our sugar. How do you change addictions?
So for me, what I have said, like in my book, 7 Steps to Get Off Sugar and Carbohydrates, is that we have to understand that sugar is an addiction. When a person who is a opioid addict or a person who's a sugar addict and they have an MRI and they're both looking at their sugar or their cocaine, both of the brain receptors light up in the same area. So when we consume sugar or even look at it, our focus narrows. We have to eat that, and dopamine releases in the brain. That is our feel-good neurohormone. Okay, we can get dopamine from walking, from petting our dog or cat, from hugging our significant other, hugging our grandchildren or children. From singing praise songs, from singing. I mean, you can get dopamine from a lot of other areas. So I say, realize that, try and, understand and try and get your dopamine from other areas. Remove like part of my 7-step plan is one of the steps is to remove all the items that have the sugar and the carbs in your pantry, in your refrigerator. Remove them. You won't have to look at it to see it, to then have to try and avoid it. It's not there. So it's tough, and I'll tell you what, if it was easy, everybody would be off of the sugar and
Right.
carbs and not buying the book.
Yeah, so it's kind of a catch-22, isn't it?
Right, right. That's why I also incorporate spiritual processes to do, reciting Bible verses, having a prayer partner, accountability partner, doing other things like that to have your spirituality involved in getting self-control, because I don't know how you do it otherwise.
Yeah, yeah. Well, and I think that we have created as a society, as parents, whatever, um, we've promoted habits, or we encourage habits that are really causing and promoting obesity, childhood obesity, and then into adulthood. What do you find those habits are?
Oh, okay, I did it. Oh, girls, okay, we're all done with this. Let's go get ice cream. We would go get ice cream all the time. That was our treat. That was, something that we did. So, um, dessert at an end of a meal, you don't necessarily need a dessert. Mm,
Oh, so
popcorn.
you talk about community where they just finished a project. Now all the girls want to go out and do something together.
Right.
What do they do rather than get ice cream, which is so good?
Oh, well, I mean, you can still do that, but you could go over to somebody's house and you cut open a watermelon. Everybody sit on the front porch and eat watermelon. And then they run around and play in the yard and everything afterwards. So
Not
that's
easy. Not easy.
no, it
When
isn't. I mean,
society has told you that's what you do.
yes, and I was right there. I was right there, one of them.
Well, what other habits do you find really promote obesity or lack of habits?
It's that they just don't realize that when they are drinking that soda, it has 63 grams of sugar. I mean, it is just amazing how, okay, here it is. This is in the book, is food labels. And here's one, and it's a real food label for this drink, and it has 46 grams of sugar in one drink. 1 12-ounce soda.
All right. So what is 46 grams? It's easy to say grams. Is that like a tablespoon? Is that a quarter of a cup? What?
Oh, I'd say it's probably like a quarter of a cup or something like that, maybe more. But the American Heart Association is understanding the sugar connection now. And so the American Heart Association a year or two ago came out with a new standard, new RDA, recommended daily allowance for us.
Uh-huh.
So for women, 24 grams of sugar is the most we should have. And for men, it's 36. And so here's for a child, drinking one soda is 46 grams of sugar, which is more than the recommended daily allowance for an adult male, which is 34.
Wow.
So when products are consumed like that, and you have no recollection or idea that that has a day and a half of sugar in one drink, that's what's easily leading to obesity, because you don't even, oh, I haven't eaten a lot, or but you drink it.
Yeah. But but then you get into sugar substitutes, which you get into the diet stuff, which in many cases, I've read different articles, positive and negatives about the sugar substitutes. So what does a parent substitute for sugar Or do they? I mean, what about honey? What about
Yes, honey,
those types of things? And
stevia, maple syrup,
now
monk
that
fruit.
has got so much sugar in it. How can that be different than the sugar they're eating in soda or some of these other processed foods?
Well, honey, I mean, we all know honey is from the bees. It's more natural. The maple syrups. I use stevia myself. And so another one is monk fruit sweetener. So stevia is an herb. Okay, it
Uh-huh.
is an herb. So you just want to make sure that there's no dextrose or erythritol when you go to buy your stevia because they lace it with the sugar.
Ah, and then you talked about monk fruit.
Yes, monk fruit is like it's a fruit from, I believe, Japan, and they make it into a sweetener, and they usually combine it with erythritol. Erythritol is not that good, but monk fruit is perfectly fine. It's from a fruit, so that is another sugar substitute. And I have a list of the sugar substitutes, like in order by highest grams of sugar in my 7 steps to get off sugar and carbohydrates. And that allows people, to go through that and decide, okay, which sugar alternative will I choose?
Well, and you talk about erythritol. So as I've looked at sugar substitutes, practically all of them, monk fruit, some of those others, all have erythritol added to it.
Yes, monk fruit does.
So can you find stuff that doesn't have that added?
Stevia, you can get stevia, and it usually has inulin in it. And inulin, that's Inulin, inulin is actually a prebiotic. So that feeds your probiotics. So I put that in my tea in the morning, my green tea, when I take my probiotic. So inulin is good. So stevia, you can, agave. So here on a glycemic index, stevia is 0, monk fruit 0, agave is 15, coconut sugar is 35, honey is 50, and maple syrup is 54.
Wow. And there are no side effects to stevia.
Not that I am aware of.
Interesting. So, but even as you look at that, as you look at monk fruit, stevia, and so forth, and I assume with monk fruit, that's including the erythritol that's in there, right? If they're saying it's still at a 0.
I believe so.
So that compared to 50 or 40 for honey and 50 for, whatever those numbers were.
Right.
That's still, now compare that to sugar. If honey is what, 40?
Yes. Yes.
What is sugar? What is cane sugar?
I don't know it off the top of my head. I didn't have it in here, but I know it's much higher. It's like a teaspoon of don't know off the top of my head. Sorry.
Oh, okay. Well, that would be interesting to find out, though, to
Yes.
see how that all compares, because it's a matter of comparison. If you think, well, 40 is high for honey, but then if you compare it to cane sugar, which may be at 100 or 200 or whatever that is, that would be really an interesting way to compare and to, I think, convince people how valuable some of these substitutes could be.
Right. Right. And, a lot of times you can just add like berries. If you add fruit to different things, like your oatmeal, you don't necessarily need to sweeten it. We kind of got to wean our taste buds off of that super sweet stuff. And I have found individuals who do, and then they go to drink their soda and they take one sip and they're like, oh my gosh, I can't believe I drank this before. It's like drinking syrup. It is so sweet.
Okay, so you just brought up oatmeal. So here we have oatmeal, we have wheat, we've got rice and white rice, obviously white wheat, and probably just regular wheat at this point in time. What makes oatmeal okay? It's still a
Oatmeal is a
product
whole grain. I mean,
that's
it's just cut.
processed.
Well, what happens with white flour is there's like 5 different parts to the white flour, and the food processors have taken out 2 or 3 of them, and all you're left with is the starch. That's why white flour can sit on the shelf for months. In fact, if you toss a piece of white bread out and put it on your porch, rodents and ants won't even eat it. You put pasteurized cheese out there, they won't even eat it because they know that there's no nutrients in
No
it.
nutrient. So
So
what about
oatmeal,
whole wheat? What about whole wheat?
whole wheat, go right ahead. Whole wheat
Oh,
is
that's
a
okay.
whole grain. It's a whole grain. But I've chosen not to continue to eat it because what has happened is in the 1950s, it was hybridized. It went from 4 feet tall to 2 feet tall. It is now drought resistant, but the gluten molecule is so large that most human beings cannot digest it. And we have 10% of the population that has a gluten-related disorder. So I wrote this other book called Solving the Gluten Puzzle, which is about discovering if you're gluten sensitive and how to embrace the gluten-free diet. So because they modified the wheat has been fine for centuries. Unfortunately, 70 years ago, 60 years ago, it was modified, it was hybridized, and it was changed to the point most humans can't digest it. Since that time, the past 60 years, gluten-related disorders have increased by 400%.
What are some of those gluten related?
Disorders, okay, there's celiac disease, which is an autoimmune disease. There's gluten sensitivity, wheat sensitivity, and a wheat allergy. So 6% of the population is gluten sensitive. And then you have like I think it's 1% of the population is celiac disease, but it's 10% of the population right now. But a lot of people don't even know that they have this gluten-related disorder. They're just suffering from, oh my gosh, there's like 200 different symptoms that go with this is for so this is gluten sensitivity. This is symptoms: acne, rash, eczema, rosacea, psoriasis, hair loss, nosebleeds, lactose intolerant, iron deficiency anemia, weight gain, muscle cramping, aching, painful joints, clumsiness, poor balance, anxiety, irritability, moodiness, depression, mood disorders, attention deficit disorder, attention deficit hyperactivity disorder. I mean, it goes on.
Oh my
Fatigue,
goodness.
tiredness. I mean, then that is just gluten sensitivity. There's over 100 different symptoms.
But with oatmeal, for instance, you don't have that high gluten and you don't have that, what they've done with the wheat.
Oh, no. So oats and wheat are 2 different products. So you want to, oats are not, okay, gluten comes from wheat and rye. We don't eat much rye.
Right.
I mean, barley, wheat and rye and barley. But we don't eat much of the barley and the rye. So we eat primarily the wheat. But oat does not contain gluten. But if you are gluten sensitive, I always buy the organic Bob's Red Mill, and at the top it has a red label and it says gluten free. And so the only way you would really get the gluten is cross contamination in a factory that you had wheat processed in.
So how would you know whether you're gluten free, whether you're gluten sensitive?
Well, you can take my quiz. I created a quiz called glutenintolerancequiz.com. It goes through all these different symptoms, and you can check and see which one you are to see, how likely you are to potentially be gluten sensitive and whether you would warrant being tested. So,
okay, and the website again is
glutenintolerancequiz.com.
Okay, glutenintolerancequiz.com. Cool.
Hmm.
All
Yes, I
right.
wanted to help people to understand this mystery. I'm gluten sensitive. My sister is, two of my daughters are. So, and it's we all know somebody who can't handle gluten, don't you?
Oh, yeah, I'm sure. I'm sure. So let's talk a little bit about fitness because that's an aspect that we haven't talked about, but that's certainly a habit that can promote health rather than obesity. And
Absolutely.
how do parents promote that with their kids?
Is get out there and do stuff with them. So go walk around the block together. Go ahead and bicycle together, swim together, get outside in the yard and hit balls and get the whole family out there or people from the neighborhood and play ball. Do stuff together. Demonstrate to your kids that this is something I am going to do for my entire life. So every week I taught a Christian yoga class, either at my church or gym. And then afterwards I would work out. And so, my kids saw that I did this on a weekly basis. And when you do it as a parent, then they pick up those habits. And so then after, you've incorporated that in with the family, and well, parents have lots to do, but send your kids out, go have them, throw a ball or jump on a pogo stick or jump rope or hula hoop or, what other things can you buy that, them to go out with some kind of device and have fun and play and be active, or build a tree fort, have them climb trees, get them
Yeah.
outdoors.
And you know what? That's something that I think we really got to get back to, isn't it? It's something that we all experience. I mean, I can't even remember in my childhood a day that I wasn't out riding my bike and hiking and doing all of those things. And it seems like that's kind of gone away to a great
It,
deal.
it really has. I go outside and I hear a bird calling, and I know exactly what kind of bird it is based on its call, because I was so bored as a kid. I learned all the birds, what they sounded like. I was outdoors, right?
Oh, that's funny. That's great. Oh, my goodness. Well, the book's been out a week.
Yes, yes. Eat God's food.
Eat God's Food, Kids Activity Guide to Healthy Eating. And how do they find it?
You can go to Barnes and Noble online or Amazon.com or my website, which is Susan U, the letter U, Neal, Neal.com.
I can't wait to hear the feedback you get on this book.
Okay, I'll let you know. So far, everybody is just thrilled to have this educational, fun activity book for kids to do.
Well, and it'll be fun to hear some feedback from parents once they've worked with their kids for a number of months, use
Yeah.
that book and see whether they've actually been able to see habits actually being changed in the nutritional habits of these kids, and maybe even within the parents. Who would figure
Yes.
that?
Right. It would probably affect the whole family positively.
Oh, well,
And
Susan,
and around the belt line positively.
amen to that. Well, listen, this has been great. It's so good to have you back on the show. I really appreciate you coming back on.
Oh, thank
And
you so much. I'm thrilled to be here.
well, and folks, get those books. She knows what she's talking about. I can tell you that. And thanks again.
Thank you.
All right, folks, hope you enjoyed it. Please join us again soon.